Welcome everyone to today's special webinar event where we're exploring the rewards, the challenges and the results of new build properties in 2026. I'm Terry Ryder, founder of Hotspotting. Today I'm speaking to Tony Seller from investment specialist 000 Property. The backdrop to our conversation today is the fiercely competitive markets that investors and home buyers are encountering in the current climate of very strong demand and very low supply. So Tony Seller of 000, you're going to talk us through the many aspects of new builds today, but in essence, with prices for established properties surging weekly, it's making more and more sense to invest in new build property.
Well, obviously, I agree with that, Terry. Thanks for having me today. Thanks to everybody who's taken the time out of the day to tune in. I'm pretty excited to talk about what we do and how we navigate the new build market, something we've been doing for a long time, but I'll get a little bit more into that later. But yeah, it's when we first settled on this topic, probably about 6 weeks ago, lots happened between now and then, Terry. So
Rather too much, I think, Tony, but in many ways, I would suggest it almost strengthens the argument for new builds and what we're having happening in the background with not only national events but global events.
yeah, I agree, and I think with that comes a lot of due diligence and understanding how to navigate that new build market. It's not easy out there, but again, like anything in life, if you engage an expert that has great networks and opportunities, you'll get a really good outcome. And again, we'll sort of take a little bit of a deeper dive on that during the call as well.
Okay, so you've got a bit of a presentation for us today. If you could bring that up, and you and I are going to talk our audience through it. Just while you're doing that, Tony, I'll just remind the audience watching and listening today that we're going to be speaking for about the next 45 minutes, allowing 15 minutes or so at the end of the hour to field your questions. So please, if you do have questions or comments as we work through Tony's presentation today, if you could put them in the chat box or the Q&A panel, and we'll get through as many of your questions as we can before we get to the end of the hour.
You can't see that yet, can you, Terry?
No, not as yet.
Beautiful. Somehow in that little transition I did before, it won't let me share. So I'm just going to fix this up. Bear with me. Sorry for those on the call.
So just remind watchers and listeners today that you should see any options before you, a chat box or a Q&A. Either one's okay for you to put in your comments and questions if you have any, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can before we get to the end of the presentation.
Of these. I do apologise again, Terry, just getting this sorted, mate.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't have a webinar.
I've got a copy here in front of me of the presentation, so perhaps I could share.
While we're getting, that's a good point, mate. While we're getting this set up, I do apologise again. Obviously, the title today, Rewards, Challenges and Results. And we're going to take a look at 2026 and new homes. We're getting close here. And new homes, they at the moment, they really sit at the intersection of what both the market needs and what investors need. There's a lot of conversation, as I said, when we started on this topic, probably the only conversation in the marketplace was interest rates and changes to CGT. There's always a bit of talk around negative gearing and that type of thing, especially coming into elections. But now we've had the added concerns of fuel and what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, impacting construction markets, all markets in general, but having quite a significant and instant impact on the construction markets. But again, we'll talk you through on how we're navigating those and what we think of those bigger picture. We're going to cover off on why building new today. There's a couple of key things that we know work straight off the bat, but this is not an exercise in new versus established necessarily. We love investment, we love property, we see value in all of it. We're just going to talk you through today exactly why we specialise in new builds and what the advantages can be. I guess a little bit about us. Are we there? A little bit about myself and 000 Property. So we're located here on the Sunshine Coast. We've been operating as a business now for over 18 years. We've built over 1,000 homes for our clients. We are very much a relational rather than transactional business, putting a lot of time and effort into our clients. We operate and have operated in various markets all over the country. We're proud to say that we're an award-winning business. However, our greatest reward comes from looking after clients. We're 99% repeat referral. We don't advertise. Are we good to go there? Thank you. So, sorry, I should be able to get this up for you now.
I'll stop my share then, Tony, and hand it back to you.
Thank you so much. Can we see replace current share? I still don't, it's still not opening up for me. For those on the webinar, I have to apologise. We actually sense checked this before we got on the call. For some reason now it's just not appearing on my screen.
Well, let's just go ahead with me sharing mine. I can work through the slides with you.
Awesome, mate. Thank you. Thank you. So as I was saying, our true reward and the recognition is delivering fantastic investment opportunities and results for our clients. As you know, we specialise in new builds. That is our niche. We make it all about our client. We leverage off long-standing relationships with builders, developers, and aggregators to ensure the very best outcomes and opportunities for our clients.
Okay.
So when you embark on investment, as we all know, location is king, and that's the first thing that we look at. Terry, you've developed the Empirical Formula, which we use for all of our selections. So it would seem fitting that I kick over to you to talk us through the Empirical Formula.
Yeah, the Empirical Formula is something that we've developed we're just celebrating 20 years with the Hotspotting business, and the empirical evidence, of course, means the evidence that's based on actual experience out there in the field rather than theoretical. But the word empirical in this case is also an acronym. Each letter of the word empirical stands for something important in terms of choosing really good locations to invest in real estate. The E is for economy. And we're always at pains to emphasise the importance of investing in areas that have a strong and diverse economy. And the really important word is diverse. We don't like recommending areas that are reliant on just one economic sector, because that makes them vulnerable to downturn in that sector, such as the resources sector, which is very volatile. Locations where it's all about agriculture, which could make the economy and therefore the property market vulnerable to drought, for example. So a diverse economy is always a great underpinning of a property market. We believe real estate's local in nature, and it's the my share has dropped out. Something you haven't done any.
Has my share kicked in? Does that mean?
Perhaps it has.
Yeah, I just got a thumbs up. so,
Okay.
so we got there. So sorry, mate. Continue on.
Yeah, we do believe that real estate is local in nature and that real estate markets actually arise out of the local economy. So we do emphasise the importance of many different sectors. An ideal location will have elements of manufacturing, tourism, a strong education, or a medical economy. Those various factors and play a big infrastructure spend, which is the I, one of the I's in the word empirical relates to infrastructure, and we do heavily emphasise the importance of investing in markets that have good existing infrastructure and amenities, but also investment in new infrastructure, because that can be a great generator of economic activity, employment, and out of that comes demand for real estate. Market size is the M in empirical, where we're talking about we don't like recommending small towns. We like the market to have a certain population size to give it a critical mass and more likely to have that strength and that underpinning of the economy. We like to see population growth happening in a market, obviously. The rental market strength can be a very important factor. If vacancies are low and rents are rising, we're likely to see the market also delivering steadily rising prices, and therefore the capital growth factor will be in play. Employment opportunities obviously very important because that's where a lot of the demand for real estate comes from. In terms of capital growth, we're looking for sales activity to be rising, and that's a factor that we're seeing in many places across Australia right now, where because we have very strong demand in so many places in Australia at the moment, but low supply, we are seeing sales activity rising, and that's having an impact on prices because there's an imbalance between supply and demand.
Sorry,
Affordability is
gentlemen, just quickly, Terry, you're sharing the wrong screen. We've got all your folders on screen at the moment. So if you can stop share screen and then go back to the other screen. That's the one.
okay, and share again.
No, it's good to go. I think, are we on Tony now? I think, Tony, if you can just test your keyboard, click left or right. Yep, we're good to go.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and affordability, we find that many of the locations that that have superior performance in capital growth are often the places that offer a degree of affordability. That's something that so many people in the market are looking for. And last of all, low risk. Again, it speaks to one of those earlier points that we don't like to recommend risky markets, volatile markets, places that have a solidity about it. So all of those factors are part of our empirical formula, which feed into good locational choice.
Yeah, and as I said, we use this pretty religiously when we're deciding where we want to go. Some excellent points made there, especially the diversity in markets. What we've seen, especially in regional areas, as they've become more than sort of a 1 or 2 horse town, they've really opened up as quality investment opportunities for our clients and customers at that affordable price point. But like anything, 1 or 2 points on their own won't get you there. We need to make sure we're ticking several, if not all of these boxes every time. So just a little bit of context in the market, and I think we've potentially covered a little bit of this already. But whilst Australia started circa 180,000 homes last year, we're still seeing massive undersupply. We've got labour shortages, we've got construction constraints, we've got development approval delays. The current global events aren't making anything any easier. Sorry, and this is all underpinned by that supply-demand metric. Now, this is not necessarily the case in every market, but the stronger markets, and obviously the markets where investors want to be, it's reaching a sort of, I guess, a critical point. What are your thoughts, Gary?
Look, I think the key factor is we've had several years now of undersupply of new homes. We're not building nearly enough, and the cumulative effect of that over a number of years now is we have a very lopsided market. We have strong demand, but we have very low supply, whichever way you look at it. the federal government target they often talk about but aren't necessarily delivering on is they want to build 1.2 million homes in 5 years. We're halfway through that 5 year period and we're already way behind the rate of homes that need to be constructed. We need to be building about 240,000 homes a year to meet that target, and we're not even sure that that target is enough. But as you've pointed out, in the last financial year, there are only 180,000 homes built. So that's 60,000 homes behind the target in just 1 year. So we're falling further and further behind. And I think there's really no realistic possibility that that target's ever going to be met. So we seem to have a rusted on, built-in undersupply. And that would tend to indicate that there's only one way for prices to go in that market, and that is continuing to rise.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And we're seeing an increase in international or immigration again, which is always been important for the Australian economy, but that's just putting even more pressure on those core markets as well. So what do we need to consider when you are doing a new build? So there's a number of things. Some of the challenges out there at the moment, and again, I touched on earlier the benefit of working with experts, no matter what it is that you're undertaking. But today we're talking about new construction and investment. Some of the challenges that you're going to come across are labour shortages, rising construction costs. Now, this is where it's really important to be working in fixed price contracts, to be working with builders and developers that have got a good trade base, working with builders that aren't trying to play outside their footprint. I mean, we all remember what happened in COVID. A lot of builders took the opportunity to secure more builds than they could handle. Prices went up, trade prices went up, supply prices went up, and we saw the turmoil left in the construction industry with a lot of builders going broke post that. There is a lot of competition for trades, and we're going to have a quick look at the planning or the application pipeline for all industries and all types of construction a little bit later. But this is only going to absorb more of our trade base. So whenever you're working with a builder, you want to see that security in their ability to deliver projects. And we're starting to experience planning delays. I mean, most of our projects are standard residential, but they're blowing out to 8 to 12 weeks, and all of those little challenges along the way, increasing build times, increasing planning times, that impacts your lending. There's a number of things that we want to make sure we're going in eyes wide open, fully understanding the entirety of a project before you undertake and get pot committed by signing your contracts. As I mentioned, the planning and pipeline at the moment across multiple industries is all on the rise. In Queensland, it's very easy to look at our infrastructure with the 2032 Olympics coming, that legacy infrastructure that's being sort of rushed through the pipeline in order to deliver in time for that event. We're going to see challenges with trades. We're going to see a lot of internal immigration to help deliver on those projects. So our market's going to come under even more pressure over the next few years, which again, it's exciting for investment, especially if you're already in the market. But it just sort of, for me, it highlights a real urgency to get into the market. And again, once you're in or on that way in, to ensure that you've got those low risk profiles around your builders and around the locations that you're looking at. And what are your thoughts, Terry? I know you'd have a good handle on what's going on in this regard and this sort of bubble or bottleneck that we're creating in construction at the moment.
Yeah, well, it was articulated quite emphatically, I thought, by a report that the Productivity Commission produced last year, which I take gave some sort of like official independent support to the points that you're making, and that is that the bureaucracy has made it harder and take longer and therefore costlier to get projects through those approval stages. The point the Productivity Commission made is that it's taking twice as long to get homes built as it was in the 1990s. Now, you would expect perhaps that with modern technology and production, construction methodology, that things would be improving and speeding up. But because of the rusted on bureaucracy, which seems to be adding layers and layers of red tape to the process, that it is taking longer. And of course, when things take longer, that adds to costs. So it's I think it's a good argument to have a professional advisor on board to help you manage the process, because it would otherwise be a little bit daunting, I think.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of my conversations start. Surprisingly, plenty of people out there that are looking at investing are not even considering or had not considered new construction at all. We've come through, a bit of a period, I guess, where that was the media did its job and made construction look a bit scary. And there were things to be concerned about. And I used the term before, due diligence on everything. You don't have to be an expert, but I like proactiveness and understanding what you're getting yourself in for and having a bit of bit of control. But ultimately, putting yourself in the hands of somebody who navigates that on a daily basis and who fully understands, it's extremely important. So, what are the advantages of a new build? I mean, off the bat, and I guess we're talking about interest rates and we're talking about CGT and these sort of things. So anywhere where you can get a leg up in regards to your outgoings and your cash flow and your income is really important. We like using the bank's money to create wealth, but also you get a much better depreciation with new builds. From a stamp duty perspective, you're only paying stamp duty on the land. Now, I don't know the specific numbers in all the states, but in Queensland, on a $950,000 project, you're going to save circa $20,000 in stamp duty, which is fantastic. And when we talk holding costs through the construction phase, and if anyone on the call doesn't quite understand that, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk you through it. But that almost covers the balance of your holding costs through that construction period as well. So I guess it balances out that argument for, well, established gives me instant cash flow via my rent. This holding period that you've got during construction, and again, that's a really important thing to investigate when you are looking at building. How long are the build times? How long are the expected approval times in your area? How active is the builder in that area? Where they're very active, they tend to be a little bit quicker on their builds. So all of these things are really important to understand. You'll have obviously low to no maintenance in your first couple of years. You've got your 12-month defect period where the builder takes care of anything that goes awry in that first 12 months. You've got full warranties on the property. You've got full energy efficiency. So the bones of your house are brand new, but also government requirements, the National Construction Code, all of that's been looked after. I know in Queensland, for example, another 7 can score you a lower interest rate. So all of these things come with new construction. One of the big ones, though, is uplift during the build process. So again, going back to your empirical formula, putting all of that into play and looking at the market value of land and construction, we're able to get a pretty good handle on what sort of uplift you can expect during the construction phase. Now, in Queensland, we've got a land shortage, like a few different areas. So a lot of our registration profiles aren't until later in the year, so October to November. We've got fixed price contracts for our clients, which is fantastic. They're not worried about what's going on in regards to trades and fuel costs. And during that period, this high growth period, they're going to make considerable amounts of money before a brick's even thrown in anger, I like to say. So that uplift through the process is a real, it's very attractive, but understanding that, and again, we're conservative in our estimations. Understanding that and what that looks like for you and your overall strategy and portfolio is really important.
It also emphasises again, I think, Tony, the importance of getting the locational choice right, because your chances of getting that uplift boosted by the growth that's happening in the broader market is so much greater if you're choosing your location really strongly, places that meet that empirical formula.
I've always said a good house in a bad location won't perform as well as a bad house in a good location. It's all about the dirt, right?
Yeah, I think that's so true, and I think all the research that we've done over the years actually bears that out. I think sometimes I think investors put too much attention on the individual property and not enough on the location in which it sits, because the point you're making is that great looking property in the wrong location isn't going to give the optimum performance that people are looking for.
Agreed, 100%. So when we're talking new builds, I mean, there are several types. We deal in all of these. So, your standard freestanding dwelling, duplexes, and I'm going to come back to duplexes. I've got a little story to share with you. Dual keys, for people who don't know the difference between a duplex and a dual key, a duplex is two separate titles joined, a dwelling joined together, but on two separate titles. Whereas a dual key is a house that has two separate dwellings, but it's on one title. That's a fair explanation. You've got your townhomes, your terrace homes, apartments, and Terry, we can call this a hard launch. We've been looking at commercial for years. We've finally found a group that we are excited to work with. I guess their values, but also their selections match ours, and sort of mirror what we look for in residential. So really excited to share that we're starting to do some commercial product as well. Great
It's
yields.
it's an interesting adaptation of what you're doing, because so aware that many investors, probably most investors, start out with residential, and as they move along and grow a portfolio, they start to become more interested in commercial types. And of course, the word commercial covers a lot of different property types, including small industrial, small commercial, retail, and other types, storage units, all sorts of things. But there's the potential to get advanced cash flow with that type of product.
Yeah, absolutely. We're finding, so we are baby steps. So we're doing, small sheds, tilt slab sheds. They price range 475 to about 650. But this is the thing that we like is these guys have got an incredible track record. They build in growth markets. So they've got a development up in Harvey Bay, just near the airport there, which we love. The benefits, the outgoings or the lack of outgoings, from an investment perspective, it's single contract, so it fits perfectly in a self-managed super where yield's really important and growth. So yeah, we're just excited to be, to have started this part of our business. And again, if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out. I won't get too much more into it now. Duplexes, and I guess again, this is the advantage of working with an expert. So we secured 3 incredible duplexes up. I don't know if people on the call know Bargara. It's the Burnett Coast, just off Bundaberg. It's still south central Queensland, I guess you'd call it. These were all exclusive to us, effectively off market, but these don't make retail channels anyway. But these were presented to us exclusively to offer to our clients first. And this is based on the relationships that we've developed. This particular relationship is over 15 years old. These were at incredible prices in an area whose market has just absolutely raced along. These were all secured early last year. They're all at site now. And the uplift, so when we're talking sort of 800 to 900 square metre lots, so 400 to 450s when you split title. These are all 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2 living dwellings on each side. The uplift on these, once the titles are separated, will be circa 400 to 500K per property.
Yeah.
So again,
I know Bargara really well, Tony. Have been there many times. Family lived there previously. Look, it's effectively the outer seaside suburb of Bundaberg, and Bundaberg's a great regional centre in central Queensland. And speaking to our earlier point about the empirical formula, one of the I stands for infrastructure, and one of the big factors in that market is they've just started a major infrastructure project, which is a new $1.2 billion hospital for Bundaberg, and that's going to be a game changer for that market. And it's the benefits. What we've found in other parts of Australia with projects like that is that there's a big uplift, particularly at the upper end of the market. And Bargara is, a seaside location, so really strong values there. And of course, a hospital includes Typically there might be 5,000 people working in that project when it's finished, and many of them are highly paid medical professionals, and they'd be interested in markets like Bargara as a place to buy and live, I think.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why we've been really active up there. The prices are almost getting to a point where we may have to slow down, but we've still got a little bit of quality stock trickling through. But that whole coastline from Bargara to Elliott Heads is absolutely stunning. And as you said, a lot of the rental market, and this is another thing when you're looking at a location and you're bringing new product to that location. If the rental market is predominantly a lot of older dwellings, there is a need and a necessity for new houses as well. And like you pointed out, those high earning medical staff are probably going to want something quite nice, and that's what we're able to deliver. And when you're sitting down and planning for a new project as well, you can make adjustments according to the market as well.
Sure.
So of the new construction market, there's generally two types. You've got infill and you've got greenfield. Infill being land that's already an established area, either it's been banked and never built on, subdivisions in established areas as well, or it's a knockdown rebuild. Generally speaking, your infrastructure is already set, your transport corridors, that sort of thing is it's all taken care of. The data exists, so it's hard data. There's great sales data in established areas, so it does have that attraction. However, the majority of what we will work in and deal with will be greenfield, so new estates. I mean, I like both, and we tend to, we operate as a builder broker as well. So for clients that are securing their own land, we've done some incredible projects. Completed one in Moffat Beach here on the coast last year for a client who secured his block. We help them navigate the knockdown rebuild. Most builders won't undertake that part. It's a separate issue to deal with, but we help them navigate that. We took that through to the build. We're there the whole way through, project managed for them. They've got a fantastic result. Greenfield, your existing infrastructure is generally a lot less. You should have income, and when you're making those location selections and those estate selections, you should understand what infrastructure is going to be delivered and what sort of a time frame you're looking at for that as well. It's designed to build on. So you generally don't have those issues with topography and sloping blocks, and you know what's underneath. It's all brand new. Developers that are building in areas that where there is a lot of slope, because that can be a beautiful place to live, where there is a lot of articulation in the landscape and that sort of thing. But a lot of developers will do their own retaining, their own terracing to make sure that they've got more buyers and more builders keen to be a part of that project. Generally the price point's better, and a lot of the growth is yet to come when it comes to greenfield. So that's why a lot of investment builders and why the majority of our product will be in those new estates. So how do you select a builder, how do you select the location? So again, we've covered the empirical formula. We know roughly where we want to be. Not all estates are created equal. So generally, as a rule of thumb, if you're going through a Stockland estate, it'll be master planned. They will generally go above and beyond what's required from them as an estate, because they see longevity and have a vision of a strong community. They prefer owner-occupiers. They'll have lower investment percentages that are allowed in those estates. They're trying to create something that is going to be sustainable for a long period of time. And the larger the estate, up here on the coast, we've got one of the largest residential estates in the Southern Hemisphere. It just keeps going and going and going. It's called Aura. If Stockland weren't doing the fantastic job that they are in there, the demand for that estate would dwindle off and it would die off. Whereas you're sort of seeing these 70 to 150 lot estates that are popping up in the Northern Brisbane corridor, for example. I've driven through some of these completed estates, and I've driven through some of their upcoming estates. And unfortunately, I know that they're about 90% investment. The last little bit is probably first home buyers, and that's the price point that they could get in at, which is great. But long term, they are not going to see the capital growth that a master planned estate will deliver. So we're very careful in that. So on my trip recently, I took a trip down to Vic, and I was down there for 3 days, just meeting with builders, walking through estates, meeting with developers, trying to decide where it would be that I would be most comfortable taking my clients, and that estate aesthetic and infrastructure is at the very top of the list in regards to where we will build within that location. I think we've spoken enough about working with an expert, but our relationships, and that duplex example that I gave you, we've been working with the same builders for over 18 years in some circumstances. There are newer relationships there. Our builder panel, we took a few off our builder panel because they didn't tick the boxes that we expected. Creating new relationships is always interesting because we're very, we vet very, very hard, if you like. We take recommendations and then we go and we vet our builders. We walk through their builds at different stages. We demand an understanding of their books and what their plans are from a build footprint perspective. But this is how we've created great relationships over a long period of time. And this is why we're able to continue to secure, even in tougher periods, great opportunities for our clients. Right build, right block. At the moment, I think I see some builders, I won't call it a race to the bottom. It's just that mongrel advertising where you're putting out a price point to engage people. I can't for the life of me understand why you'd put a 165 square meter home on a 500 square meter block, unless you were just trying to make it look cheap. Again, we avoid that sort of thing. We want the block, we want the project to match the block, and the entirety of the project to match the estate and the aesthetic of where it is. We review, we take you through the whole contract process. So EOI, land, I mean, your solicitor reviews land, and the build contract as well. And then the big one, how to select a builder. Well, it's not the big one, but you've got the right block, you've got the right location, and now you want to make sure that you get it right with the right builder. The builders that, I'll be very careful, but in my opinion, the builders that got through COVID, in good shape, they didn't blow out their build footprint. They didn't blow out their numbers. They made sure they retained their trades as best as they could. They treated their customers fairly through the process, and they got through. The builders that took advantage of increased sales, that overextended themselves, that didn't have their own business infrastructure to support what they were trying to put on the table, they found themselves in a lot of hot water. And obviously, if you're a builder who already had a sketchy balance sheet at that point in time, you were going to struggle through that process. Quite a few of our builds, the builder made no margin or lost money on it. So their ability to get through an event like that was underpinned by their financial strength and their ability to know their own lane. How long they've been around, have they got any black marks? We take care of all of that. But these are, if you're out there doing it yourself, these are all the things that you want to understand. Definitely their build volumes. So ask them how many they built last year, ask them how many they built the year before, and how many they're planning to build this year. We project manage for you. So we're out on site walking through our builds on a regular basis where it's geographically relevant every 4 to 6 weeks. We're in consistent communication with the builder. I mean, I've had multiple conversations with builders over the last few weeks, Terry, and I'm sure you're hearing a lot of this as well. But one of our key partners, since the 13th of March, they've had over 80 price increases sent to them by trades and suppliers. Now I'm on the forefront of that. I'm not finding that out, after the fact. I'm finding that out as we go because I'm in constant conversation with these guys, and they're asking me what I think and how how's it best to navigate this this period. And they're giving us an opportunity to secure prices before they have to. They're forced to put price increases in. And it is important that builders build with a margin, because again, if they're building for free, cash flow dries up, and that's when I'd rather pay a bit more now and get my build complete than have it go bust halfway through construction. And the right builder, it's not just handover. The right builder has great maintenance, and our builders are always fantastic in that 12-month defect period, especially. Anything that pops up, they're out there straight away fixing it. These are the things that impact investors. You want to be able to set and forget it.
It just feels, Tony, like now more than ever before. Right now, it's the thing that you really do need to get right.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Look, a couple of examples of clients that we've looked after. This particular example, fantastic guy from Victoria, unfortunately went through a divorce, had started a portfolio, everything was broken down and split in two, and he was effectively starting again. He had an investment property in Vic, wasn't doing very well, also having issues with the tenancy laws, and he approached us. He had a very small budget. We were able to secure him a fantastic little low-set terrace in Everson Gardens. He signed his EOI in January 2024 at a fixed price package of 438. And I'm happy to say it's renting now at about a 5.5% yield, and he's had over 30% uplift since his initial purchase. I picked this story because anybody who understands the market knows that this would be a difficult brief to fill at the best of times. Can I fill most price points? Yes. Will I fill them if I don't have a product that's going to work for you? No. I know where you can buy it, but I'm not going to be a part of that process. I only want to put clients into things that are going to work out really, really well for them.
Yeah. And I've got to say about the location again, Tony, that we've just actually updated our top 5 Adelaide hotspots report, and that Evanston Gardens area, that's up in the north around Gawler, is actually in the report because it's an area that we see coming stronger. Adelaide's had great growth over the last 5 years. It's continuing to grow, but those northern areas of Adelaide, very close to where some of the big jobs nodes of Adelaide are, some big employment nodes up in the north of Adelaide, and Evanston Gardens is an area that's close to all that action. It was also close to the Barossa Valley, which is a nice lifestyle point as well.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you've got you can throw the Edinburgh military base in there as well. So
that's a huge. I think it's the biggest defence facility in all of Australia, and it's a huge employment zone. So those things are really important for property markets.
And that's exactly why we're very active there. I am sort of now, with price points, I'm wondering if if we do switch over to Vic, but we're still in the process of making informed decisions about that. So,
just to remind people watching and listening that we're getting towards the end of the presentation. We will have some time to answer your questions, so please put your questions into either the chat bot or the Q&A panel, and we'll try and answer as many as we can before our time is up.
Now, I do realize I'm a little bit behind time. This particular example, now we don't necessarily work with a lot of buy and flippers, but this client is on his 7th property with us. And that's his strategy, which puts a little bit more pressure on me to get it right and ensure that within that sort of 12-month period, he's getting enough uplift to make this a good strategy for him. Signed his expression of interest in August 24, paid 840. This property sold it was actually September. I know it was the 15th because I was pretty excited about that price point at $1,015,000. So in just over 13 months uplift or profit there of 175K. Now we could easily cherry pick our best outcomes for a forum like this, but all of our clients see fantastic growth and uplift in their projects, and that's something we're really proud of. Into the future, so I mean, we've discussed it already, that the housing supply, we're seeing a bottleneck in planning. We're going to see some constraints on trade availability. We're seeing prices, I'm an optimist, Terry. So I think this will create a bubble in the market, the current global tensions. It's a great reminder that we are globally a connected market. What does happen overseas will impact us, and we've seen it time and time again. The property market is resilient, and it will continue to be resilient. And our message is don't be alarmed.
Look, I think that's very true. In fact, this is something I did a broadcast about just last week, in fact, because there's always inevitably a media speculation when we have these sort of global disruption events, and what impact does that have on real estate in Australia? And history shows that the impact is usually positive if there's any impact at all, because in times of major disruption, people look to the safety, security, and solidity of real estate. And so, well, we have those periods like the COVID period, like the global financial crisis, real estate performs in Australia because it's seen as a safe haven. So I'm not expecting anything too different this time around.
No, I agree. How we can help. So, as I said, we work in multiple markets, but we tend to be intensive. We only work with circa 50 clients a year, which gives us a great opportunity to cherry pick the best options in the market. But we like to, work intensively in certain areas. Been around for a long time, which I've touched on. We do both residential and commercial, and we're very picky with our builders. Anybody who does book a discovery call with us, you'll receive a free copy of our very own Terry's Why Property Values Rise book. You've got the QR code there. You can scan that. That'll tee up a calendar where you can book a meeting with myself. We've got 40 of those. So the first 40 of you that get in, you'll score a copy of Terry's book, which is a fantastic read.
Which I can highly recommend, of course.
Of course you can.
Yeah, it kind of distills my 40 plus years of experience as a writer and researcher and an active investor, of course, into a relatively short number of pages, but there's hopefully a lot of good information in there to help people, particularly make good locational choices, because I think that's so important.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so I urge people to take that opportunity, use the barcode, and perhaps doesn't cost anything to go to that next step of asking a few questions and having a conversation with Tony and the team at 000. Love to have your questions and your comments, the Q&A panel or the chat box. Gary has put in a question there. He's referring to a new build in Traralgon in Victoria. That's in the Latrobe Valley, down sort of south east of the Greater Melbourne area.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not quite sure, Gary, what you're asking there. You put in some information. Traralgon, new build, any option prices for a 4-bedroom new build around 650,000. I think perhaps Gary's asking whether that's a realistic option.
I believe it is. Yeah. So Gary, just scan the QR code and reach out, mate. And I'm more than happy to have a chat to you. I don't have a stock list in the back of my head, but I was looking at when I was down there, I was actually surprised. I'd seen stock coming through at really low price points. I was surprised at the quality of what we could do. But yeah, let's have a look at it together. It won't take me long to answer that question for you at all.
I do think, generally speaking, Gary, that, firstly, again, talking about location, the Latrobe Valley is a good place to be. It's a growth market. Traralgon is the number one town of the Latrobe Valley region. There's some big employers there. There's some big infrastructure nearby. For example, they massively expanded the hospital recently, and knowing the typical prices in the Traralgon market, for established properties, the numbers you're talking about do seem to make sense. But as Tony says, scan the barcode and have a more detailed conversation about that. Question from Sasha. Are there any markets where you can buy new builds cheaper than established markets?
Uh, I, I, I think the Victorian market has got examples of that. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
think the Victorian market is a great example of that.
yeah,
But you also need to be, I mean, it depends what you're getting. So comparing price points is one thing, but comparing the balance of infrastructure, connectivity, public transport, all of the other elements that you look at when you're investing, it's really important to understand that.
yeah.
Um, what are your
There's
thoughts,
actually
Terry?
been a lot of media commentary on that very question recently, Tony, which I've been sort of tuning into. A lot of people saying that because the prices for established property have risen so much in so many places. We've seen markets like Adelaide and Perth and Brisbane and many regional markets, having 3, 4, 5 years of really strong growth, averaging like 15% a year over that
Mm.
period of time. Established properties become very expensive, and in many markets, so the so we're being told that the new builds are actually a cheaper way to get into the market overall in many parts of Australia. So I think the answer to Sasha's question is, generally speaking, yes, there are plenty of places where that would be the case. Barry's asking, do new properties tend to have better rent than existing properties? Um,
Yeah, your rental yield, if you looked at it across the board, your rental yields in new properties are better because the price point is generally a bit lower for the same sort of area. We find, I find with established property that your rental yields are going to be lower. You're paying. There's an interesting thing with established property, isn't there, Terry? Because when it's a new build, you pay for the land and what it costs to build on it. With an established property, you pay for the project and what the person who's selling it needs to get out of it. So,
yeah,
so you tend to pay a premium.
yeah. But also the fact that the property is new and modern and ticks a lot of boxes would tend to suggest you would attract a higher rent for that. And also mindful that in Victoria at least that recently mandated minimum standards for rental properties, and there's a concern that existing properties, older properties, won't meet those standards, and somebody who owns those property or buys that property is going to spend quite a bit of money, many thousands of dollars, bringing it up to standard before it can actually be tenanted. But presumably, a new property will already meet the standards, so it won't be an issue.
No, you're right. I was actually talking to a site supervisor when I was down in Victoria who's going through that exact thing. He's got a couple of older properties. He's having to put air conditioning. Now, look, I think air conditioning probably should have been in there to begin with, but he was talking about that exact thing, all the upgrades that he has to make now. Um, Fortunately, he can do it himself, but for others, that is a bit of expense involved for sure.
Okay, so Luke is asking, with fixed price contracts, could builders increase their price point as a result of the Iraq War?
In short, no, unless there is something contractually written into the contract itself. So, for example, one of our builders has notified us that they're going to fix prices till I want to say 1 April um, next year. This is for registration profiles of October, November, December. Um, if the registration runs over 1 April, they in the contract they're allowed to charge a 2.5% increase. Now they're allowed to charge it doesn't mean they will charge it, but by then just the organic growth in construction costs would meet that mark anyway, so they probably would. But this is also why you need to fully understand your contract. So in short, no.
Okay. Um, Josh is saying, do you say, or should you be looking for any other risks buying from those smaller 700 to 100 plot developments over, a big main developer like a Stockland master plan estate? I think that's the question.
Um, yeah, look, have a look at their. I mean, at the end of the day, they've just got to get you a block of dirt to build on. So I don't foresee too many issues. They have to, they have to go through the DA process like everybody else. They have to meet with the town planner. They have to have the required amenity and elements in the estate. My core concern is that it'll be majority investors, and over time that will impact your capital growth.
Okay. Now, Jack was asking about something you touched on briefly, and I must admit I've got a question about that too. And it's about the depreciation factor with a new build. You mentioned it, but I'd be interested in. I think Jack is asking, the sort of numbers that might be involved in a typical new build and what difference that can make to your bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. So with some established, you can claim. I won't name the terms, but it works out about 2.5% PA, I think, on the build. Whereas with a new build, it's everything and everything included within the build. From a number comparison, you're looking at depreciation of up to 10 to 13K on a brand new build, whereas in an established, it's around that 2 to 2.5K mark.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Terry.
Well, the federal government, in its wisdom, changed the rules some years ago. Whereas that with you can only with new builds you can claim much more than with an established property. You can only claim the sort of fixtures and fittings. I think essentially with established property, and it reduced quite considerably the depreciation claim benefits for established properties, whereas new builds retained those wider benefits.
Mm. So over a 10-year period, circa 120 to 130K in depreciation on a new build.
Yeah. Okay. Daniel, what are the rental yields like on the Sunshine Coast now? Is it still a good market to buy in?
Yeah, great question, Daniel. Well, Terry and I both live in the area, so we'll have firm opinions. Look, it has backed off a little bit. I'm targeting for any project on the sunny coast that we're doing. I'm targeting 4.2 to 4.4% is what I want to see. If you're getting into some of those higher end builds, though, you'll see that number drop down a little bit lower. But we're also seeing cases of where we're up sort of that 4.5, 4.6 as well. Rental demand on the coast is extremely high, so I think those numbers shift pretty quickly as well in favour.
Yeah, and in terms of is it a good market to buy in my view, yes, and I'm speaking from parochial bias there. The Sunshine Coast has been a great performer from about 2020 for about 3 years after that. Due to the big infrastructure investment happening on the Sunshine Coast, it became a national leader on price growth. The market then went into that inevitable sort of pause phase in terms of price growth, but it's definitely on another growth path now. It's perhaps 1 year into its next growth spurt in terms of prices, and prices are rising strongly right throughout the Sunshine Coast markets, both I have to say for units and for houses on land. Unit price growth is very strong on the Sunshine Coast. It's a great lifestyle market, but there's still big infrastructure builds happening. The Maroochydore CBD, which is building a CBD from the ground up, which is kind of a unique thing in Australia, but it's still very much a work in progress. The airport's just about, I think, to launch its first operations as an international airport, which is going to help the tourism market. So there's a whole lot of things happening there. We're almost out of
Shameless
time,
plug.
but
Well, quick shameless plug. We actually did a webinar with Hotspotting last year, I think April last year, on the Sunshine Coast market. So, and we talk a lot about, we drill down a lot about the infrastructure that's both here and incoming.
yeah. Luke's asking, is Perth still a good area to buy into? I'm a little bit torn, Luke, with that one because the Perth market been having really strong price, been leading the nation, one of the national leaders on price growth for 4 or 5 years now, and logically you would have to say that it's very close to its peak. In terms of sales activity, the numbers are dropping gradually, but not alarmingly. So it indicates it has peaked, but it's nevertheless still producing strong price growth. But it may be a different situation for a new build situation. I think actually probably it's one of those places, Tony, where it would make perhaps more sense to be doing a new build than buying an existing property because that established market has had 4 or 5 years of big price growth already built into it.
Yeah, and look, we haven't ventured to the Perth market as yet. Geographically, there's a bit of distance, and as I said before, we work with 50, circa 50 clients a year, so we're able to satisfy that, those investors with fantastic options in our playground. But I've always been interested in the Perth market. We recently looked at some beautiful apartments at Subiaco. So they've sort of, I think, they're preserving their old Subiaco Oval and developing around there. There's botanical gardens. So again, it really comes down to the location and the project itself. But yeah, I know I've got a few mates that have done very well in the Perth market as well. But at the moment, we're just not active there.
Okay. Well, we're pretty much out of time, Tony. I think we've answered most of the questions that came through in the Q&A and the chat box. So it's a good moment to wrap things up. Thank you for your presentation. I found it really informative, great information. It's not easy to summarize something as big and as complex as doing a new build investment in less than 60 minutes, but you managed to do it. I certainly feel better informed about it than I was an hour ago. So many thanks for your time and for your presentation and your obvious expertise in this area. And just encourage people to use the barcode, follow up. As we said earlier, it doesn't cost anything to have that initial conversation to find out whether you might be interested in going to the next step with this, with 000.
Really appreciate it, Terry. Love this forum. Appreciate everybody that joined the call today. Have a great Easter. I've got small children, so my Easter will be hectic, a lot of fun, and supercharged with too much chocolate, but I really don't mind.
And our Sunshine Coast market swarming, we hope, with lots of tourists because the weather's looking pretty good.
And I reckon it will be, mate.
Yeah. Okay, well, enjoy that, Tony, and thanks again for your presentation today.
Appreciate it, Terry. Thank you.
Okay, see you later.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.